Happy Monday and welcome to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Win Again Academy, Mark Moyer doing some great things with his informational and athletes coming on for some networking events. There's another one tomorrow night. Check out winagainacademy.com. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Kevin Lyman, founder of the Warped Tour of the Wolff Den. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, Matt. Good morning, Matt. How are you doing?
Great. Doing great. Really excited to have you on here. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. But if there's people who don't know who you are, just give them a quick intro and tell them.
I mean, I've been around the music industry for about 40 years. I've been a production manager. And I guess a lot of people, it's funny as your career grows, you get known for one thing. But I was known as the founder of the Vans Warped Tour. But, I had a pretty successful career creating lifestyle events and, partnered on the Mayhem Festival, the Taste of Chaos Tour, the Sprite Liquid Mix Tour, still actively involved with Sidewind Dummy Records, and now a full-time professor at the University of Southern California and, producing this new podcast, the My Warp Life podcast. So just, keeping busy, trying new things and, taking one day at a time right now.
So it wasn't retirement, it was moving on to the next thing.
No, I don't think, most people I know, we just adapt. We're going to always have things to do. The only thing we're going to do one day is run out of time, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's, I like to use that when my team loses. Say, we didn't lose, we just ran out of time.
Just ran out of time.
But hopefully we have a lot more time, because you've done some great things. You're working on some great things. The first question I guess I'll ask is, why was Warped Tour so successful and more successful than, say, some of the other stuff that you've worked on to become that, iconic event?
Well, Warped was something that really, you're going to have a project in life that, really comes from your heart. I always like to say, Warped was driven of my love and growing up. I worked, before I started Warped Tour, I worked 12 and a half years in the clubs of Los Angeles, running up to 320 shows a year of alternative and punk bands and all different types of music. But it was the love of that music that drove that tour. And, I had to be fiscally responsible, but it was never driven by dollars. It was 90% of the stuff we did on Warped Tour was about the culture and the lifestyle, and the 10% was about the finances and the business part. Some of those other projects I worked on were more business oriented. They went on for good. Taste of Chaos was very successful for X amount of years, and Mayhem had a nice little run there. But you have to be willing to get up every day if you believe in something. And Warped kind of rolled with the times. It stayed true to its roots. It always felt like a little bit of a backyard party going on, and there was an accessibility to it. But it was, we never took giant swings at things. We just kind of tweaked it through the years and paid homage to the past, but always looked to the future. Yeah.
I see Bamboozle is making a comeback. Sometimes it's just timing or,
the timing, I think, there's definitely going to be a pent up demand for shows coming out of the gate. Anyone some of the shows that have gone on sale have sold very well. So I'm sure there's going to be a big rush of shows going on sale, and, timing for Bamboozle is, as long as they come back, I'm sure they'll have at least a good first year.
Kevin Goodman out in Canada joining us.
Oh, hello, Kevin. How are you, man? Good to see you. Well, I'm not seeing you, but thinking about you guys often up there in Canada. All my Canadian friends, they're kind of going through the ringer right now, similar to what we went through in California. They're
having it a little worse from what I heard lately. Is they got a little worse than we do here, but I think we're heading in the right direction. Eventually, we'll get back to things, and there's going to be. There's some bigger festivals going on right now, so we just got to see how that goes, and people go to what they feel comfortable, but you got to be responsible too, right? You got to be responsible for a lot of.
Well, yeah, I think what we're going to see is some of these first festivals, and a lot of states are going to look at them closely. So when festival producers are saying they're going to run them safely, I sure hope they do, because what will end up happening is a lot of the other states that are a little more conservative are going to keep an eye on these festivals. And if they don't, it'll slow down a lot of the rest of the country a lot longer than probably necessary.
But, you know, I was in Nashville, and there's, lines out the door. The thing about Nashville, Vegas, these are vacation destinations. So a couple of things. I get this. I bring it back to wherever I'm from. It's not concentrated, kind of like the same thing that happened in South Dakota when they had 100 last year. And then, so, I mean, let's say I go to this festival and I get COVID. Am I going to be the one to be like, hey, I got COVID from this festival? I don't know that people are going to necessarily be honest where they got it from. So I think it's just kind of a luck of the draw, and we'll see what happens. It's, you know, you could have 100,000 people together and nothing happens, and you can have 5,000 people together. And if that one person has it and they're interacting and they're with it, who knows? I think we're still at a little bit of the unknown. One thing I believe is you should, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. So I think that has to come into play with a lot of planning for these events. And like, can we push it to next year? You know?
Yeah, I guess I have the luxury of not having nothing really on the books other than I've got a recovery event that'll be in Las Vegas. It's a smaller event, but it's not scheduled till the end of September. So really, the first things I'm kind of getting involved with, I'm thinking by then, we're talking about, we have 50%. This morning they said 50% of our population has one shot, and about 33% has two shots. I'm thinking, for me, it's easy to be patient because I've got a lot of other things going on, and I know some people's livelihoods, they're kind of pushing and they're kind of nervous, but we'll see, and hopefully they'll run them safely and nothing comes out of it. Well,
that's a good, it brings up a good point too. Being patient, trying to figure out, should I do this? Can I do it right? Or is it better off to just do it? Is money going to be the biggest motivating factor of it? So, companies and events, organizations that can actually, skate by and say, all right, we're going to push it because that's really the best thing to do for everyone else and not just the bottom line. I have an event that I wanted to do last August. It was going to be the first time I'm doing it. And I push it to this August, and I think we're probably going to push it to next August. And I've been fortunate that I didn't put there's not a lot of money into it until I start to go in. So I think that has to, be a factor also. Like, you want it to be a good event and not just force something onto people.
Well, you have the public puts a lot of faith in us when we put on these events, that we're going to do them safely, that we're going to try to make them as safe as possible. I hope that money isn't the driving factor for people doing these events, that they really look at them and say, we can safely do these events. If money is the driving factor, that could set up some potentially risky type situations. So it does remain to be seen. The first people, coming up with events, I think some of them, are scheduled in May. And I know down in Florida, you're kind of wide open down there in Florida in many ways. But how many people of some of these people maybe, how many, that's that whole thing, that traveling issue. If you hold a large event in Las Vegas and, 30,000 people travel in from there, where do they take, if anything happens? So, we all just have to, there's we're moving in the right direction. Let's hope we don't take a big step back.
Even without in the COVID world, do you have a sense of what % of people running these big events do it really the right way and run great events, as opposed to an event that does well just because of what it is? And the event that I'm going to do was it happened 11 years ago. It was a Gator basketball event. One of the worst run events I've ever been a part of and seen in my life, but such a great day for what it was. So do you have a sense of how many people really run a great event versus, look, this is going to go with no matter what?
Well, I think we're entering a phase where there's some questions asked. The entry point to running a festival used to be like, you used to put in a lot of time before you tried to create your own festival. People that were working festivals, you worked up to creating and running large events. And then all of a sudden the entry point just became a big bag of money. I think if you look at it, and right now, this past week, they're talking about the settlement from the Fire Festival. Billy McFarland was a great con man, salesman, probably a great salesman. more than a con man. He was a salesman, but there was no questions asked really, I think, by a lot of people like, do you really have the permits to do this? Do you really have the infrastructure and a company to produce this? Oh, you have a big bag of money that can pay artists, but do you really have the back end? So I think we're entering a phase where people are going to ask, like, who's your production team? What kind of history do they have? It's because I think a lot of people, especially as this Fire Festival things, there was a lot of questions asked. And, it's funny, I got hit up on a festival yesterday, like, hey, Kevin, you need to come in and help us with this festival. And I looked at it, and my first indication to my wife, I go, wow, there's still people running around with the con job out there. It's our business is a little free flowing. That's what's good about it, and also a little bit negative about it. But I think we're starting to ask, like, do you have the resume to be able to pull something off like this? And I think that people are demanding a little bit more when they go to an event.
But there's also a difference in the Fire Festival. If there's anyone who hasn't watched it yet, the documentaries, it's just a wild scene. I mean, it's just one of those, it just blows your mind. It's kind of like I watched the you might know about this, right? Have you watched the college admission scandal thing on Netflix yet?
Oh, no, I haven't.
That is a wild show, too. I mean, USC was involved a little bit, and we'll talk about USC in a little bit later because that's where you teach. But there is a difference between someone who wants to con you and someone who just got in over their head and then didn't have a way out, right?
Well, oh, absolutely. It's interesting. Bernie Madoff died the other day, and you look at it and you kind of go, and I think a lot of people I know that have been in this business, they don't set off. The Ponzi scheme is not. I don't think a lot of people set off to start a Ponzi scheme. I think they get in over their head. Their ego doesn't allow them to say, "Hey, I'm in trouble. Let's figure this out." So you get that, and you think you could always fix it by having the next great show. And it just starts rolling until you're in so deep that you're kind of shuffling and it collapses very quickly. We've seen that with people within our business. I don't think a lot of people set out intentionally to create that, but it happens. And a lot of times it happens by ego, not letting your ego say, hey, I'm in trouble here. Let's all work. Can I talk to everyone here and see if there's a way out? Or no, I really screwed up. Like, I can't pay your bills and I can't do this.
And then the feeling of, like, I look at a Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street, and McFarlane, like, no remorse for anything. It's always someone else's fault. And he's going to get off, I think, rather lightly for what happened, considering he knew it wasn't going to happen and had all these people come to the island in unsafe situations. I mean, I think he's going to get off pretty easy for what it was.
Yeah. Well, luckily, no one died from it. Yes. So that's good.
It's a good thing. You mentioned something about big swings. So I want to talk a little bit about the Warped Tour. I was at the last one in West Palm, and there was a rumor going around that Green Day was going to perform, and it really got legs. I mean, that people were saying, no, this is happening. This is happening. Did you know about that?
No, I didn't know that. I really didn't. My whole thing was that Pennywise would come in, and Pennywise would play the last set and play Bro Hymn. And because they were such a big part of the beginning of Warped Tour, I wanted them to come in and be the last song. And then I guess over on the other stage, it was funny that every time I decided they wanted to be the last song. So they kept stretching their set out on the other stage. So who would be the last note of the last day? And I think it was very close, but it ended on the note I wanted it. And and then it started raining right afterwards. It was very strange.
Yeah. Was there anyone who, like, big names that I guess let's start talking general. I mean, was there anyone that you really wanted to have on the Warped Tour over the course of the years that you couldn't get on, and anyone that you said no to?
Well, it was interesting. It was very strange because 21 Pilots was actually supposed to be on Warped Tour. Their record label thought it would be a great move because I'd worked with many bands at the beginning of their careers. And it was actually their agent pretty much talked them out of it. And it was my same agency that I was with of doing Warped Tour. So that was kind of a bummer. It wasn't the band. I think, there was other stuff going on. Band, I met them at the AP Awards, very nice people, an amazing band. I just wish I had them out on Warped Tour at some point. Wish I had Panic at the Disco at Warped Tour at one point. But other than that, I mean, a lot of people played Warped Tour. So it was one of those things where, I wanted the Ramones to play the Warped Tour, and I'd always offer them, I'd offer them all Ramones all the time stage on Warped Tour, all their little side bands, like Marky's band, Dee Dee's bands. They could all play all day long, but they ended with like a 30-minute Ramone set. But, tragically, unfortunately, people start passing away, and that never was able to happen. So, Joe Strummer was supposed to be on Warped Tour the year he passed away. I had just confirmed him and went and saw him down at the Troubadour and was super excited about having him. And then got that call over the Christmas holidays. I was out up in Napa. I'll never forget. Went out for an early round of golf, and I got a call from Rolling Stone who said that Joe Strummer had just passed away. So he never got to be on Warped Tour. But no, it was, hey, thousands of bands played that tour. Yes,
and some bands that, were very unknown until they did, like a Katy Perry, right? I mean, you talk about those stories a lot about Katy Perry. What were some other bands that really got their notice on the Warped Tour and made it?
Yeah, I mean, it's going back, for me, it was those little, it's funny, the big pop artist right now, BB Rexa, who wrote all those great songs for so many people, when she decided to break out and become a performer, she kind of cut her teeth out on Warped Tour right towards the last few years. And I mean, she just keeps cranking out these hits. I don't think she's been out of the charts for years now, just these big pop hits. But she came out, and I just remember her figuring out how to perform live on that tour.
Yeah. And a lot of, Warped Tour from a festival point of view, from what I noticed when I was there, is the smaller stages with these lesser known bands get these huge followings, which you don't always see at a lot of these festivals. So I go to a lot of other festivals, and it's like, okay, I want to see the headliners, but there's not as big a crowd where some of these up and coming and lesser known, I guess lower in the pyramid on the poster.
And that's, one of the things I think, there's a lot of talk about, all these other festivals. I sure hope that they invest in young talent and they give them some developmental spots, because one of the things that concerns me is we are losing a lot of venues. This rollout of our funding for our smaller venues, I was worried that it was going to get bogged down in bureaucracy. I said it about 5-6 months ago. I go, don't count your money. You're going to be lucky to see it until 2022, and sadly, it's taking. Hopefully, it'll come earlier. But we're losing so many venues, and there's going to be so much traffic out there on the roads. When everyone hits the roads, we're all talking about that. That where are these younger up and coming bands going to find a place to play and get that exposure? So I think a challenge would be there's going to be lots of festivals. Is throw up a little stage, put a little stage somewhere in your festival grounds that can highlight developing artists and invest in them a bit, because that might be one platform where streaming can still remain a big part of it post pandemic. We're looking at streaming where that's going to fit into the ecosystem, but I think artist development, because the ability to develop artists has really been limited with no touring.
Yeah. So all great points, because we're seeing a change in the dynamics of a year of no touring plus, and some good. There's a lot of streaming stuff out there, and some of it's good, but I didn't find a lot of it's recreated. It's already filmed. It's not live. Me personally, I can go on YouTube and there's so many things that, documentaries and DVDs of concerts that I can go watch if I want to. So I'm not as sold on that. I think they need to do better with the streaming aspect, but certainly it's not going to go away. And there's some hybrid type opportunities, especially in a festival where, that doesn't come to my area, that I want to go see. Certainly is going to be a factor moving forward. You haven't gotten into any streaming.
Well, I was impressed with a young woman named Sherry Saidi who came to me when she was working on her app for a VIP app called Veeps, and so Veeps. So I spent a lot of time with Sherry, and was one of the initial investors in that company.
Okay.
I just gave her a little bit of money just to help her as she was making relationships, and then of course Benji and Joel Madden came in as big investors for her. So I paid Kate, who worked for me for so many years, now works over at Mandolin. So I've been when she has a question, I'll answer that. And I just think there'll be 4 or 5 companies that carve out little areas within the streaming world. I think there's going to be 10 to 20% of the people out there that may be suffering some sort of PTSD from COVID, that aren't going to go back into the live space as quick as people think they are. I feel there's this, and I'm watching it even with around, my close family and people around me. There's different levels of comfort about what's going on, like where they're going to be. And I think some of this, there'll be a place for streaming going forward. Yeah.
I'm not ready to go. I'm ready to go to a festival, but not ready to interact in the way that I used to, where I'm up in the front, front of the stage and with the crowd. I'm going to sit back and kind of be away from people, at least for the beginning of it.
Yeah. I think it's going to be everyone's comfort zone. And, it's going to be each individual is going to have their own comfort spot. And I think that'll range from people that are ready to jump right up in the pit, the mosh pit, and go crazy, to people that are going to go, hey, you know what? I'll see how it goes for the next year or so. Now, we're going to be back in a phase, from what they're saying is we're going to all need another shot in 6 months. So we'll see how that goes. I'm
ready. Let's do it. That's a good segue into the Madden brothers and the Warped Rewind cruise that you guys put together. It's a 6-man event, and I'm a 6-man veteran. I've been on 9 of them now, and I can say unequivocally that the lineup that you had for Warped Rewind was incredible. The amount of great acts that were on that boat, relative to, generally speaking, you get maybe 3 headline acts and some people. I mean, it was a crazy scene. People loved it. They're rabid for it. They thought, they're excited for another one. I think there's talk about another one. I don't know if that involves you.
It's interesting from the, and the 6-man is a fabulous company. My daughter worked for them for quite a bit, right up until the pandemic. She was down working. They're great. Anthony is one of the best CEOs of a company I've ever met. His culture, people like Darby working down there. And then, of course, they brought a lot of the Warped crew people. Terry and that crew would go down and work on the ships, so that they would work Warp during the summertime and then transfer to some of the fall festivals and then go into the cruise season. And actually, Darby's coming to one of my classes tomorrow to talk to some of the students about different things. The Warp cruise, it's interesting because when we're talking about economics, that fiscal responsibility, I think with the cruise, it was one of those things where it was like you said, one of their highest rated. Fans loved it. They loved the programming. But I like to describe it as maybe not the best business model, because it was, as I tend to do sometimes, over-program. So I over-programmed the ship, and there was so many great bands playing. And I think, like you said, there's usually a couple of headliners, and then people kind of hang out on the ship. I've never been on any of their other cruises, but they're doing other things like going to the spa and going to the nicer restaurants and going to the casinos. It was the Warped cruise. So everyone would literally songwriting at the basketball court with Mayday Parade. Instead of like a couple hundred people showed up, the whole ship would shift to that spot. Yeah. And then it was like, oh, we're doing an acoustic set down here with, it would be, it'd be one of the other artists. And then it'd be like, the ship would shift and everyone would run through the buffet and grab a slice of pizza. So it was kind of a warped tour. It wasn't like it didn't spread out. And a lot of the economic models, build in all those ancillary incomes, and those just didn't show up with the Warped cruise. Super fun. Amazing. What a great time. We have had discussions. There's no firm plans, but maybe we do a destination type resort in a couple of years or something. We figure it out. No rush. That's the cool thing. There's no rush right now.
There's no rush, and it's actually a great point you put, because if you try and put together, like, if let's say you want to do a cruise next year and you're trying to put this together, you're like, there's no way you can have that kind of lineup again. You just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think and that's where everything's up in the air right now. People don't know, are they going to be able to tour in Europe next year? Are they going to be able to tour in the US? Which venues are going to still be here when touring reopens? You route a tour and you're holding time in a venue until that venue gets some of this relief funds that is so desperately needed by them. We're losing venues every week. I'd say we're still losing venues because they just can't hang on. They see that light at the end of the tunnel we talk about, but it's out there, and they have tangible things they have to pay for. So yeah, everyone's kind of on this fence. It's very strange. I've been talking to people, and no one wants to. There's a lot of people who want to do something, but it's hard for them to commit to.
Yeah, because you're talking about a year out. I mean, you're not. It takes a long time to put these things together.
It does, and it's even now people are talking 2 months out. Is that festival actually going to happen? Are we going to actually be able to get in a vehicle and travel around the country? Well, you don't want to be a band that's booked a 1 month tour and have a hot pocket of COVID in the middle of that tour where you have a week of shows canceled. We don't. That band, it'll blow your whole budget. You'll be broke, because you get stuck with nothing to do.
And the materials too, right? You're buying shirts. I mean, Ticket Time Machine, we get stuff done. You can get stuff done within 2 weeks, but other places you got to order months in advance, and now all of a sudden you got all this inventory that you can't use.
We even watch it with professional sports. As many protocols as they had, the California Angels and Minnesota Twins games were canceled this weekend due to COVID. These are billion-dollar businesses and multi-billion-dollar pro sports. They're not just some cool band that lives in a town that's trying to get on the road and fund a tour, with by selling T-shirts and a few things. So it's really tricky right now.
Yeah, we're a little bit short on time today, so we'll switch over to. I'd like to get to know Kevin, Lyman, the person, more than the Warped Tour and the events. So let's talk a little bit about your hobbies. And I say hobbies, but I mean, is being a professor? I know it's a job, but is it a hobby? I mean, it's not.
It started out as kind of like they recruited me to come and teach. There were some former students of mine that now were adjunct people I had mentored in the business were now adjunct professors. When I went there, it was like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's a job. It's a job. And especially during this COVID time, we are teaching on Zoom, but you have to engage the students constantly to keep them motivated and helping them find internships and jobs. So I've really enjoyed that. I enjoy that side of it. I guess my hobbies were like knee surgeries because I'd had so many on my one leg. So I got one right when the pandemic started at the end of February last year. And I've had time, to be honest, to rehab and try to take care of myself in some ways. I don't want to ever say that, the bright side to me of slowing down due to this was I was actually able to heal and not try to go out on a tour or do too much. We're having our charity golf tournament coming up here that we had to reschedule from January. It'll be held on May 17th out at Huntington Beach, where it looks like we're going to be able to hold that. So been trying to get the golf game up a little bit. The barbecuing is, we're trying to eat a little. It's funny, we're trying to eat a little more vegetarian, but I still have to get on the grill once in a while and do my thing. And I'm more, and then it's been, the garden, now into my second season. I've usually just would plant things and kind of get at the first couple tomatoes and then jump on the tour bus. So kind of refining the gardening stuff. So always,
I'm following you on Twitter. You'll give your stuff away, right? I mean, you'll be like, hey, we got all this great stuff. Who wants some tomatoes and who wants
yeah, there's been kind of a movement, in our area out here in California. And I don't know if I think other people have been doing it, but, when the pandemic started, we'd put a box out in front. And if you had excess, for citrus at that point and produce, you just put it in the box. And then that, for me, that kind of changed to starting seedlings. So you buy a pack of seeds. How many tomato plants do you actually need? You get 50 seeds. So I take two plants for myself and put the other 40 of them out for the neighbors, and they just disappear. So the past couple of weeks, it's been pomelos and lemons and oranges, and we'll be into the thing. So we waste so much food in this country, and a lot of it in California. A lot of us have a lot of citrus as well. Down in Florida, you're from Florida. We let it sits on that tree. Why don't we put it out so people can enjoy it?
I'm from New Jersey, but I live in Florida. That's always the biggest misused question when you ask someone where they're from. You ask me where I'm from, I'm going to tell you New Jersey. You ask me where I live, I'll say South.
Yeah, well, I've never had any New Jersey orange juice, so it's orange juice. So okay.
There's an Uncle Matt's that makes orange juice. I see in the stores, and I always used to send it to my nieces and nephews when they were younger to tell them it was drink my orange juice.
Right.
But yeah, the gardening stuff is like bulk. When I see people throwing couches and stuff, and some people just pick them up, right? I mean, people can use what you can't in a lot of ways, and it's at least something that's great.
Oh yeah, we've been going through stuff, and it's funny. We put it. My wife's like, "Oh, that's garbage." I go, "No, let's put it outside and see where it goes." And like an hour later, it's like there's nothing left. People are repurposing and using things. I know some people have started some art projects using rusty tools. So I threw a bunch of rusty tools out there. They're gone. It just it's if one thing this has done, it's open our neighborhoods again. You're kind of getting to understand your neighbors, because I'm talking. We've lived here almost over 20 years in this house, and we knew our neighbors. I'd have barbecues and people, so we probably knew more than others. But we have music across the street. They have set up a jazz band every couple of weeks, and people play. And though jazz is not necessarily was my favorite music, it's still bringing people together. So we have met a lot of people in the neighborhood, and I think it'll be a lot of fun when we can start having more than maybe 2 or 3 over at a time. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so look, there's so many different tangents we can go. I know the Ramones is a big influence to you for the Warped Tour, because I always see you wearing the shirt. Is there someone who was a big influence on your life in the music business?
Yeah, there's a few people, and I'm starting to interview them, putting them on the podcast. The next episode's about the Van Doren family, Steve Van Doren and his father, Paul, and Christy. So that episode will come out next week. For me, it was a guy named Gary Tovar, who was the original founder of Golden Voice. He was also a very large marijuana distributor, so he had a dual job at that point. But he had a lot of influence on me, because he taught the value of a show and delivering a little more than what the fans expected. And I think he had a lot of influence on also Paul Tollett, who started Coachella. We both worked for Gary, and it's interesting that we went on to do what we do. I'm going to be interviewing Bob Hurley this week, who just had a lot of influence and from action sports and music. Action sports always supporting music. Bill Silva was an influence, but I think my greatest influence was, even though I only met him a couple times, was Bill Graham, the promoter from San Francisco. I witnessed him. We used to sell egg rolls in the Grateful Dead parking lot, and I'd watch how he ran his shows and how engaged he was with the public and how he ran everything. And then when I was on Lollapalooza in 1991, and how he ran Shoreline Amphitheater, and watched him a whole day and just got to talk to him for a minute. But the coolest thing for me is when we did our final couple shows, we did them in Atlantic City and we did them in San Francisco at the amphitheater that he created, to have some of the people who worked for him say, hey, you remind us of a lot of a Bill Graham. He would have yelled at you all day long, but he would have respected you, Kevin. I think those moments when some people have actually said that to me have made me feel good. To even be said in the same breath as Bill Graham once in a while was fantastic.
It kind of makes everything feel like it's worth it when you get some of those, feelings of gratitude and appreciation, for sure.
But ultimately, you get it when you open the doors and people run in and they're so excited. But where I got it was at the end of the day. Just, it was weird, like, the old dude out front just sitting there, but I'd listen to people leaving your show. I think that's very important. I think a promoter or producer should spend time just sitting on the wall, listening to people leaving their shows and hear what they're saying, and hearing the voices of these people who would come to the show, just talking about seeing this new band for the first time, or I picked up this at the To Write Love on Our Arms booth, or wow, I want to get involved. Hey, I registered to vote today. Just listening as parents were picking up and watching. I'll never forget on the boardwalk in Atlantic City, two people running up to their moms, and two kids running up to the moms who were out front by the Stone Pony and said, we met Bert from the Used and Simple Plan today. And the moms looking at them like those could have been people from outer space.
Yeah.
But those moms probably ran out and told their mom that they met Bruce Springsteen at one point in their life, that they were so excited that, that somewhere down the road, that moment in time of that changed their lives in hopefully some positive way by turning them on to live music.
And that the people who started going to the Warped Tour by the end, you were around for so long, were taking their kids and maybe, sharing the experience, which is, to be able to share an experience with your parents or your kids and something like that. Obviously, they always talk about golf. You see the bumper sticker, a bad day of golf is still a good day. I think a bad day of music is still a great day. I don't know if there is a bad day of music, but it's all relative.
Yeah, right now, it's just that you get to, get it. Hopefully, we're going to get back to it soon. Hopefully, we're going to get back to it soon. Matt, that's, I think, I hope for my friends. I've been in a much better, I guess, situation than many people. I just want my friends to get back to get to do what they love to do.
Yeah, and so again, so many tangents here, but let's talk about the podcast real quick. That's a hobby, but we talk about it. That's a real it's crazy how much it does. You're gonna have some great guests just because of who you are and what you've done. Can you give me one name that you think might be hard for you to get that you would love to have on?
Oh, I'm working on I want to do a whole episode on Ice-T, and we're just trying to get on his schedule. I think we could build an amazing episode around Ice and his time on Warped Tour, how I met him on Lollapalooza in 1991. He's been a huge influence on my life too. He traveled on my tour bus for a whole summer, and there were some great late night conversations riding around on that tour bus, and some of the things he just told me come back even to this day on a regular basis. Just to, you've got to listen to your gut. I mean, we hear that a lot, but really starting to be able to listen to it, he helped me get to that. And he always had this saying, and it's really hard because you're now in education and you're trying to be like a professor. And he had this term called pimp past it. It was like, you've got to, and it's like pimp past it. It's like it kind of can be taken in many, many ways. But when he described it about how if you were on a mission and then you grew up, the pimp always had to get to the end of that gate over there. Everything in between in the day was just clutter. And he just always had to pimp past it to get what he wanted done. And if you look at his career, what he's done is amazing. How he's transferred his whole life and all the things he's doing. Now you can't turn on TV. Between him and Snoop Dogg, they control the whole commercial.
Yeah, between being an actor and a singer and an activist, he's out there and doing some great things. Speaking of being activist and following you on Twitter, you're very vocal in the in politics. We worked together on the I Voted Festival. I know you were a part of that with Kate. We hope to have Kate on the Wolff Den at some point. You did a 320 festival on mental health with Talinda. so much stuff, doing so much good for so many people. But, you know, when you stick your head out there and give your opinion, there's a lot of opportunity for backlash. Have you gotten that from some people who are not on the same?
Oh, absolutely. I learned that, you know, I think in 2017 that, you know, I always just say, get out, then go. You get backlash. It's okay. It's okay. You know, I mean, if you put yourself out there, you're right. You're going to get some. But, you know, I always tell people, you know, at the end of the day, if you ever want to show up and stack your life up against mine, drop on by. Yeah. I'll cook up a little food and we'll discuss. You know, it's easier to lash out at people on social media, and but you know, when I learned early on, many times those people are just, you know, just get out there and do something, do it better.
How about the people you know who might have not seen eye to eye with you on some of the stuff? Do you hear from them?
Oh, we've had to, you know, but those people that I know will usually still pick up a phone and call, or drop on by. Like I say, we can. I like differing opinions. I value differing opinions. That's where we've gotten away in society, that we will not accept other people's opinions. I accept them to a point. I'm going to be very vocal in things, you know, and I'm sorry that, you know, some of these people that I know that kind of drifted into that world of QAnon and that I just can't accept. It's the world of conspiracy and social media. And, you know, I'm sorry, you know, a guy like Mark Zuckerberg is just, you know, him hiding and using all this stuff is bullshit, because people are being easily manipulated on social media that don't really understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some things I read them and I'm like, there's no way that this is serious, right? There's no way that someone actually literally believes this stuff, which is crazy. It's just crazy to me. And there's certain issues that are just, there's no both sides on certain issues, and it's not you know, there's just not, for being a human being, and you know, and that's what we try and be. We're all human beings. We all want to try and be better and do better. I think you've done a great job. You've done some great things. It sounds like you've got some great things in the work. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. I know we gotta let you go. I got
to go get that tooth fixed.
Yeah, I got two questions for you. We're a memorabilia company. We're a memory company. You have so many great memories. Do you have one great physical memory from a show you did or a show you went to that you were involved with? I see you got all that such great stuff on the back. Is there one that means something? Maybe it was passed on from a friend or a family member or anything?
I mean, I'm going to get it right here. I'm going to bring this over, Matt, and show you that a friend of mine brought me this weekend. I don't know if you see that.
Oh yeah, Woodstock.
That's the original, one of the original posters.
Wow.
He brought that. A guy named Larry Budnick brought that to me this weekend. He came to visit. Larry's been around. He owns a company called Strawberry Fields, and he said he had this. It was one of the first posters where they added the bands, and it kind of shows like Woodstock. The first posters, they didn't put any bands on because they were trying to not highlight all the music that was playing to get all the permits through and everything. So
we started with not naming. I just bought a Final Four ticket, you know, because it was like, you know, competition. It doesn't even show who played in the game. I'm like, why do I want to find? If I'm a fan, I need to know that my team actually was there, or my band. So that's kind of what we're doing.
I guess you said physical memory. My nose is slightly crooked because when I was working a stage one time in a club called Fender's Ballroom, Iggy Pop was swinging from the rafters and he kicked me in the nose and broke my nose. So I think
that's more of a memory up here, but I guess it is a physical.
I have a physical memory from that. No, I have a lot of great, you know, there's so many awesome things. And you know, it was this week, actually, I was just at a little thing. They did a little social, there's a gap, and we're meeting people in the neighborhood for the first time in years. And I'm like, go to the park the other day and we're all talking, and this guy comes to visit. It was like 12 people. And he told me that he was in Morrissey's band. And I said, oh, you weren't in Morrissey's band when they played Aloha Tower in Hawaii? And he goes, yeah, I was. And I go, wow, I was the production man. I did production on that show. And I'll never forget how pissed off I got at Morrissey for doing something to his band. And that's going to be, we're going to tell that story in this upcoming podcast now, because they were all supposed to have a week in Hawaii afterwards. They were just finishing a tour, but he got sunburned. So he made his band come home instead of getting to hang out in Hawaii and enjoy that week. And I was so mad, and I had no vested interest in it, that I parked a little hot dog cart by his limo when he was leaving, just because he was, you couldn't have hot dogs at his venues or anything. And it just sparked the memory of, like, you have to put you need to step back and put others first. And that was something that, like, his whole band, he ripped away this week of vacation for them because he got sunburned. And I'm like, that's just so selfish. Yeah. And I learned, and I still look at that. So there was days on my tour and stuff that you had to step back and make sure that your crew was taken care of. Put your own interests behind you at some point. And, it's a little more.
You're the ones who make it run. You got to make them happy, and you want to keep the good ones. Two bucket lists: a bucket list travel that you've never been to, and a bucket list band that you've never seen that you'd love to see.
Well, the bucket list travel thing is just something we're delaying. Between 20 now to 22. We're going to go sailing around the Greek Isles and go to a big Greek wedding, which has been now delayed to 2022. So we'll be spending some time in Greece in next summer, not this coming up summer, the next summer. And bucket list bands, gosh. Gosh, wow, you got me stumped. You got me stumped on that one right now.
Oh, that's all right. You'll come back. We'll get you out here on this. We ask our guests, name one person who's living that you're not related to. You can spend 24 hours with them one day. Who are you picking, and what are you doing? It could be anyone, as long as they're living.
Malcolm Gladwell, fishing.
Okay, he's on the list. We're going to make it happen for one of our guests. We got some pretty interesting names, but Malcolm Gladwell is now on, and you're going to go fishing. My friend Brent, who's not here, he wants to go fishing with George W. Bush. So maybe we'll get you guys all together on a big fishing trip. Really appreciate your time. Looking forward to speaking with you down the line and seeing what you're up to. Go get your tooth fixed. I know it's great, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, Matt. Take care. Be safe.